Moving on to page 2 within our example account, Tequila Willie's, we go into the account maintenance zones. Just understanding the total screen that you're seeing here, it's a moving window, and notice as I move up and down with the highlighted area, the account variables, or the second or bottom half of the screen, you'll see start to change depending on the options that I have set for that particular one. I move up and down the screen with a Control X for down, Control E for up. If I want to take the screen and move the top up and down, it's a Control Z followed by a Control W, and that moves the screen inside of that upper part of the window there. I'm going to take it on down here and just move on down so you can see that there are more zones than you're going to see just in that section of the window or that snapshot of the window at the top. Now, the number of zones that any account can have is virtually unlimited. I say virtually unlimited because there's always limitations based on the size of the hard drives and so on and so forth like that. But in the side of the SIMS program, we deal with the average zones for each account. We can set that to any value that we want to. We can make it 99. We can make it 13. I think the demo comes at about 40 zones per account average because of the zone accounts that some have literally hundreds. And when we get involved in our bigger databases, they're going to be variable sizes. 13 is a very good selection out in the field, and probably is going to be the selection in your central station. Let's take a look and look at this very first zone here. It's a zone 1. This account could be looked at as a 4x1 account. We have zone 1. The message is fire. Now, as again, I mentioned to you before about all these pop-up windows that we have. The description for this zone is a smoke detector in the kitchen. We've got a restoral zone for this. A code 11 restores the zone 1 smoke detector in the kitchen. If there was a cancel code, we can put the cancel code in there. There are several things that we're going to monitor, and I'm not saying this is the way you run your business, but in this particular zone, we're going to note that we have 60 minutes to get a restoral in. If we don't get a restoral in 60 minutes, we're going to notify the operator that this is an unrestored zone. An unrestored zone. A lot of people think of 24-hour safes as somewhere that needs to, the closing of that safe door needs to be monitored continuously. People are going to be in and out of the safe all the time, but we want to make sure that they close the door behind them, that kind of thing. So in there we might put a 3-minute restoral window on there, so if they open it, they've got to close it. We may even auto-log the fact that they open it. That may be insignificant, but we bring it up to the operator's attention if they don't close it. There are A and C delays. I'm going to show you in other zones some of these other capabilities. Entry-exit would be more for direct wire. Whether I want this zone to restore all other zones. Whether I want a restoral in this zone to be an exception as opposed to the general norm, which would be auto-logged. Do I want to force this zone to be an exception as opposed to looking at the mnemonic and making the decision there from my tables? The ANC delay, which is alarm and cancel, if this zone monitored it, would I be dealing in seconds or minutes? The opening type for this particular one, and we'll look at that when we get a little lower on the list here. Double knock, we'll speak about that on some of the other zones. Prem verify. Here's where I can set the premise verify flag on a zone-by-zone basis. In other words, fire, I might not want a prem verify, but I might on an interior trap, or I might on a perimeter zone, or whatever. Does this zone have to be verified by the backup account? In other words, I can set it to where if this zone comes in, I must get a signal on my backup radio, or I create an event for the operator's attention. This could be very helpful in that maybe every day they run some sort of a test, and I expect to get in a code 3 from my radio, and I expect to get a code 3 in from my digital. If I get it on the digital but I don't get it on the radio, I want to bring it to someone's attention that my backup account didn't send in the information. I also have the ability now to email when a certain zone comes in. A typical usage for that would be an opening by a certain user. Let's say that it's a residential account. The children come home at 4:15. Mom and dad want to know when the children walk in, so we can set it up so that if a 1 is put in this particular field, I'm going to email this zone directly to the primary email account for this account. A 2 in there would say send it to the second client email address. A 3 would say send it to both. So that when little Johnny walks in the door, we're going to automatically send an email to mom or dad, could be on their cell phone, that he's now arrived home. That's their notification that their child got home. This got to be a large part of the monitoring business, but required a lot of overhead. So here's a good way to automate this. We can do the same function to a dealer. Let's say that some sort of supervisory signal is not something you want your central station to handle. But on this supervisory signal, we want it to be emailed directly to the dealer so that no operator action is required. There are all kinds of signals that should go directly to the dealer that really don't involve the central station, including low battery signals. If we have a multitude of power failure signals that we may want to notify the central station on, we really have got to question the fact whether the central station should then handle subsequent battery signals. The subsequent battery signals should go directly to the dealer so that the dealer has to run out and do the service on the batteries, or missing zones in the case of modem 2 format. There are lots of possibilities that should go directly to the dealer and not anywhere else. We can identify any zone to get a warning number up. We spoke in the general overview about warning screens, and we'll demonstrate those when we're looking at the dispatching capabilities of the SIMS. But we can pick any number of different warning screens to come up whenever this zone comes up. We can nominate any zone to be sent to a sub-account or partitioned account number. Early in the days of digital dialers, there were a lot of multi-zone panels that were done where they would take a single 8-zone panel and hook 4 apartments to it or 8 apartments to it. They would create a different account for each one of the apartments, even though there was only one panel. In this case, it might zones 1 through 8 might have come into Tequila Willie's account number, which was 11001, and then a zone 1 would be resent off to a different account number, which might be 97-05 if it were zone 5001. So we would redirect it somewhere else. This is where you can accomplish this function. Now, after the multi-zone panels were used back in the early 80s, then we got involved later on into area information in the early 90s, to where we would take a single panel and have lots of sub areas within a factory, so that the factory office could have their own schedule, could have their own call list, and so forth. So we can take that same concept and break apart and ship to other areas for different accounts. We'll probably demonstrate this after we get done with this account. I'm going to take you to the zones of a partitioned account so we can get a little bit more of a view of that. Down at the bottom, we have a whole nother group of messages that we can take whatever this was, this fire. This happens to be a fire, smoke detector in kitchen, but we could pretend it was anything. And we could say that it was a gate. And Monday through Friday, this gate, I'm going to put a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this gate from 0900 to 1700 was just a log type signal. But outside of that time, it was a fire signal. So we have the ability now to modify a signal coming in to mean something entirely different at a certain time on certain days of the week. I can even go a little bit further there and draw and say that Monday through Friday, whenever the account is open, make it a log type message. But if the account is closed, it's a fire. Please don't look too closely at my example about fire versus a message, because that's not really relevant. But what is relevant is the fact that I've modified the meaning of that zone to something entirely different if it's Monday through Friday and the account's open. So we have lots of ability there to change the scenario. Now, why would we go to all this effort for something that probably you only have 10 accounts that you want to do this with? Because we know for a fact that 10% of your accounts create 90% of your exceptions. And there are circumstances, our salesmen are out in the field and they're selling accounts, and their job is to sell accounts. And when they come in the door and they bring a check back to the office, that's what everybody gets paid on. And sometimes they create scenarios that are very difficult to deal with. But our job as a software manufacturers, and our job in data entry, is to try to find a way to automate as much of this as possible so that whatever that we have to do is minimized. Whatever our operators have to deal with is minimized. And this is just one example of the way that we can do this. I'm going to talk about a couple other features in a few minutes that again can help us reduce the type of effect we're trying to have there. Now let's just go on through, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to pick backdoor entry, force door, rear loading area. We have a PIR in detector dining room. Okay, this is an interior trap. I can create a nice scenario here by adding two of these together. Let's say the rear door loading area. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to answer yes to double knock for that one, and also for the PIR in the dining room. I've created a sort of a scenario there. A double knock simply means I'm going to require two signals before the operator's attention is going to be brought to bear. It is very helpful when dealing with interiors. Let's say I have an interior trap, interior PIR in the dining room, an interior PIR in the living room, interior PIR in the bathroom. I've got three interior zones. But if one of them goes off, the chances of it being some intrusion is extremely remote. And I've got a moral and social responsibility to somehow try to verify what's going on out there, or to try to analyze what's going on. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's what the operator's for. They're there to make decisions based on multiple zones. Well, I say let's try to automate as much of this as possible to the criteria that we want them to react in. Because they're going to be off doing something else. An operator, when they sit down in front of their terminal, they generally work for their 8 hours. And whatever we can take off of their 8 hours of hard work is something that they can put into the other accounts. We know that our operators can take more time to help people do the right thing if they don't have to deal with so many events. So, if we take some of those events away from them, they're still going to work their 8 hours, but they're going to work more efficiently, and they're going to give us better customer service to the people that are out in the field. Okay, so in this case, we're going to say if I get an interior trap from the bathroom, it sends a signal and it's going to be auto-logged. But if I then get one within a programmably defined period from another zone or that same zone again, then I'm going to bring it up to the operator's attention. Thus, the generic term double knock requires 2 hits. All of us want to dispatch on a single item. There is a great argument for the moral justification of that, but the reality of it is we can also send the police so much that they stop going. And I have the utmost knowledge that has happened way too much over the last couple of decades. So we have a responsibility to try to send the police when we're more certain that there's something. This is not the same as a fire. Fires have got to be dispatched. Holdups have got to be dispatched. Panics have to be dispatched. Duress has to be dispatched. I don't think that anybody's going to try to post an argument against those. But especially interior traps, they really should be dispatched, with a little bit of knowledge of the background and the overall sense of what's going on. Okay, enough about a double knock for the moment. Let's come down and look at the zones. Those of you who have been around a while or familiar with the 4-2 format know that a B followed by a single digit is a user number. It's an opening. B1 is opening user 1. We may want to nominate user 1. Let's say that that's the owner of the building. I may want to give that owner of the building the capability to open any time he wants to, as long as if he's outside his schedule, he closes up in 30 minutes. I may want to nominate B3 as a person that requires an email to the manager whenever he opens up. These are things that can be done, little things that can mean a lot. I may say that any other users are just going to be normal openings as per the schedule. In this particular case, I've done another little slight thing here, which is B1 equals O1. So the B1 is changed to message 01. This doesn't hold as much as those panels that are sending in 4-2 format, where B0 through BF are the first 15 users, and 40 through 4F are the next 15 or 16 users. In that case, we may have to do some changes to get these user numbers to a fashion that's acceptable back to the customer. The customer doesn't care that the panel sends in a 45 for user 19, for talking's sake. All he wants to see is user 15 come up on his report. If we choose not to send out the names, he wants it to say user 15. He's not concerned with the fact that our panel sends in some strange number and we're supposed to figure out what it means. He wants it in clear English when it comes back to him. That's why we want to give you the ability to modify code numbers as they come through your system. In this case, if a B1 comes in, it's going to be changed to a 01. If a B question mark comes in, it's going to be changed to an O question mark, whatever the second digit is. B5 equals 05, and so forth like that. And C3 would equal 03, on down through the list like that. This is a wonderful capability. It's only available on 4x1 format, 4x2 format, and 4x3 format. So if you had 1, 2, 3, you could say it equals 4, 5, 6. That's possible. But the most extensive use is for those 4x2 transmissions, to where we have to unscramble the user capability and try to make it something that the end user customer can make some sort of sense out of. Okay, I'm going to take now just a minute and move you over to a couple of other different types of zones that are located within the zone accounts. We're going to come out of Tequila Willie's now and go to some zone accounts. This is the one for the contact ID zone account. Now notice here we have E100s, and I put 3 question marks, which means if it doesn't pick it up in the base account, it has to go to the zone account. I know that anything that starts out with an E100 event code is a medical. I know that. E101 is also a medical. It's a pendant transmitter and forth. Now I can go on down here and find others. I know that an E161 is a loss of airflow. This is identified by the contact ID protocol. It doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be true everywhere, though. Panel manufacturers can make these event codes mean anything they want. And while the protocol, the standard says an E161 is a loss of airflow general, that's not necessarily the reality of what the panel may do. I've seen E380s, instead of being bypasses, or test signals on some panels. Very prevalent overseas, to where I don't know if they were trying to look at the Ademco protocol through another language or what, but just mistakes are made. Now, this takes care of the contact ID, the general understanding of it. And there's lots of nuances to it, and I don't profess to sit here in front of you for hours trying to explain all of those. But this should start giving you a general concept. Let's move to a couple of the others. SIA generic zone account. SIA codes are a little bit different. In the SIA codes, you'll notice here I've used the last character as the area identifier. If I wanted to, and I think this is a good example, if I wanted to send all area 2 signals to a different account number, this is how I would do that. So every time an Area 2 message comes in for a SIA protocol, it would go to this other account. I wouldn't do this inside of my zone account, but I might do this in the base account. This would be a perfect example. You've got a factory, it's got 15 different areas or whatever like that, and I can resend it out to some other place, so that from the operator standpoint, he doesn't know about the whole factory. It probably should be unimportant to him. The fact he's dealing in the office area with the office people, with the office schedule, and with the office zones. Okay. We'll just get rid of that. Now, coming out of here, probably the other very popular one we ought to stop by is the Modem 2. The Modem 2, again, has the area identifier as the last character, the 7th character, and then it is made up of very similar, in many respects, to the way the SIA protocol is done, except its zone is right justified on the 6th character. So a B, well, let's just look at one down here. An alarm might be space A. It has no ability to send in burglary, alarm, fire, alarm. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't have any ability, but it's been chosen not to do it that way. It just identifies alarm for the most part. There are a couple of panels within the Modem 2 and 3 and squared protocols that identify them that way, but for the most part. And it will identify a 1 like that. That's a zone 1. This might be a zone 2, a zone 1, and some of the panels may even stretch it all the way out that. But the zone number pretty much is right justified at the end. Typically, I don't think you'd see this unless it were something like this, for the most part. There are exceptions, and that's why when we put our zones inside of our zone accounts especially, we'll put question marks as wild characters in there so that any character will match in there, and we can bring it down like that. That concludes our explanation of page 2, the account zones.